Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's session. Ferrilli is pleased to join our colleagues from Pratt to talk about their COVID-19 response and how Pratt transformed the digital student experience using Salesforce communities. Our presenters today are Joe Hemway, the Vice President of Information Technology and CIO at the Pratt Institute, Diana Russo, Director of Enterprise Technology at Pratt, and me. I'm Carol Thomas, and I'm Senior Vice President with Ferrilli. We were delighted to partner with Pratt on some of the work that you'll hear about today. Today's topic is really about how one institution changed very important connections with their students through transforming the digital experience, and the tool they chose to use was Salesforce Communities. We hope for you that the outcomes of today will give you some insight into the benefits of design thinking to deliver a custom solution and what that meant and the importance of that approach to Pratt. We will show you some of the real-world Scrum and rapid deployment techniques that Pratt used, and hope from that you will develop an appreciation for how those tools might help you. And then understand how Salesforce's low-code communities platform can be leveraged in this very creative way, and to really provide a very custom environment for any institution that chooses to move in this direction. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joseph Hemway from Pratt to talk about Pratt. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks so much, Carol. It's great to be here. It's great to be here with Diana. It's been an incredible 6-month journey, as I'm sure a lot of our peers out there at other institutions have experienced. And the team at Pratt, along with your team, have done an incredible job, and I'm happy to be here to talk about it. Pratt is an art, design, architecture, School of Information institution, founded in the late 1800s by Charles Pratt, who had a vision for developing an institution that would serve the new labor force. It was during the Industrial Revolution, or at the end of the Industrial Revolution, soon to be the next phase of the Industrial Revolution as automation really kicked in. And he saw the need for training a new type of worker, and he had a great vision about that. And that vision has had several iterations at Pratt over the years, you know, in the early 1900s, post-World War II and beyond. And the school has expanded appropriately, but it's always had that art, design ethos, that design thinking, and we've all inherited that appropriately. We're part of the ACAD group. It's an elite group of independent colleges of art and design. And our enrollment is about 4,800 and has been that for some years now. And spread out, as you can see, among a larger population of undergraduates, but a fairly large graduate population as well. So that's Pratt in a nutshell.
So like many institutions, Joe, Pratt faced the challenges imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'd really love hearing from you about Pratt's response to that and kind of the challenge that this project tackled.
Well, you know, like so many other schools, we were faced with a situation where we had this pandemic and all the realities bearing down on us. And, you know, Pratt, as I mentioned, is a bit of a different school. You know, it would have been one thing if we could have said, well, let's, you know, just put everything online, put all of our syllabi, put all of our exams to, you know, move online. And in large part, we did have to do that. But we had to move our community online. And that was a little bit different when you have things such as, you know, the fine arts and technical shops where things are very hands-on. It presented a real challenge. So there was the, you know, the exit back in March, like other schools. But then it was, you know, what were we going to do? You know, so the first part of the semester, we really handled all of the hands-on components, and then we finished up the semester online, the spring semester. And then the challenge really began in earnest. So we, during that time, we set up a telepresence response center with Salesforce, set up a 7-day per week call center. And then we immediately began and thought about what we would have to create in order to have the right kind of the right kind of virtual institution that would really be befitting Pratt. And that's where we came up with the One Pratt concept. And we wanted something that was tactile, something that was a console that was sort of like you could almost grab onto it, kind of like a Game Boy feel, if you will. And something that imparted the idea of, no different than walking the paths on campus than it was walking these virtual paths, and provide a simplified approach to everything that a student or a faculty member would have to do in their day. Whatever their journey was at Pratt, we wanted to have a very simplified, very obvious, and very direct approach. And it had to be befitting Pratt. And that design thinking had to be at its core.
Well, as you mentioned design thinking, I know that was a very important component of the vision for this custom solution that really is very much a Pratt solution. So let's talk a little bit about what that custom solution embodied for you. And you've already mentioned design thinking, but I know there's more to say about that.
Yeah, it had to be much more than a reaction. It's the difference between a reaction and a response. We quickly, when we had our design meetings, we decided that this had to be something that we would have done anyway. We would have done without this situation with the pandemic. And as we came up with these critical requirements and elements, that was when we started drafting the plan around the One Pratt console. And we had not much time to do this because we had to put it together, and then we had to go through some internal trainings, but then turn it over to the students and the faculty in pretty short order, so that not only would they be ready, but they would have the confidence that when they came back, this wasn't going to be some alternate set of things that they were going to be confronting. The students had to know that this was a Pratt education. It was a 100% appropriate Pratt education for 2020, despite anything that was going on. So Diana was central to these proceedings, and quickly put together the set of requirements and started to build out the team that we needed. We basically had to be able to drift through the org chart and kind of not depend on a hierarchical structure, and pull people in for their expertise. So in a way, it sort of flattened the organization for a while. So I'd turn it over to Diana to talk a little bit about that.
As far as the platform and why we chose Salesforce Communities, we're already investing in Salesforce in a number of different spaces. We have Salesforce Service Cloud for the IT service desk. We've been working on a knowledge base, an IT divisional knowledge base with the knowledge module while we were in COVID. And even using the omnichannel section of service for our telepresence live support, as Joe mentioned previously. Marketing Cloud was something that even before the current situation or before COVID came about, that we were investing in and already building out. So we had already done a lot of data pushes to move to Marketing Cloud as our institute email communications tool. We even had the origination with Salesforce came with the Sales Cloud module for our research and partnership opportunities within our provost office. So investing in and using Salesforce Community only made sense for us. We already had done a ton of work in trying to build this out in other pieces that we can actually reutilize when it came to communities when we were going forward. So the next thing is trying to figure out our methodology, or what our deployment methodology would be. We were using in enterprise technology, which is where I'm from, my department, we were using Agile pretty frequently. We were doing stand-up meetings every day. We have our Kanban board every morning. We did iterations for projects where we just started, this is the minimum viable product, this is what we could provide to you now, and then enhanced it or iterated off of it with the next set of items that we could provide. So Scrum is basically an agile process, but we're delivering software at the end of each iteration rather than just a development piece. So with this, we've actually had deliverables and delivered pieces of communities after each iteration, which is pretty fabulous. We really needed to do it this way because we had such short deadlines. We had 45 days for students, 30 days for faculty. We needed to organize all of these deliverables, provide a minimum viable product, because at the end of 45 days, our students were going to be let in and it had to work. We had to have some really realistic conversations as to what could be provided in such short windows. And each time we're continuing to enhance the delivered product as we go.
We had the pleasure of working with you, Diana, through this model in supporting the development approach. And the development approach really is inherent in the choice of Salesforce and the Salesforce platform, because Salesforce as a product relies on configuration as opposed to coding. And when any kind of coding or automation is required, doing it in a declarative way, picking and choosing, as we're used to in many graphical user interfaces, picking the operation that we want to have happen and what should happen when that succeeds or fails through process builder or workflow or other activities. And so using that declarative form is very quick because the underlying code is well tested and well understood, and configuration is easy to change. So the Lightning platform upon which communities rest is really designed to allow the kind of application build out that you were trying to accomplish, and to really exercise that quickly and in a time frame where we could iterate design and could build out customizations in a way that was both scalable and sustainable within that particular architecture. So this is a conversation we certainly could have for a very long time, but rather than talk more about that, let's get to the results. I want to really have people understand what the end product of all this conversation and all of this hard work has been. And I know I've been excited to watch this, and I'm going to turn this over to you, Diana. Tell me when you want me to switch slides, and we'll talk about the results.
Okay, great. So this is basically our homepage. The homepage is the perfect example of what we had to do as far as breaking things down into buckets and making them simple and easy to use, even down to the font. It is that simple to read. It's easy to see. That was what we were going for. So basically the top navigation is the buckets of information that we've pulled together to say, okay, these are the most important features or pieces that you're going to need to use on your journey at Pratt. The homepage even allows us to do some personalization and pull in information about the person that's logged in, which is not something that we've typically had before or in the past. So even down to those icons listed at the top, they can click the little plus sign, they can add in items that might not be default selected, but they can also remove things that are there that they might not need. So it really gives them a starting point as to say, like, well, I really want to plan my schedule, or I really need to see the pay my bill, but I don't necessarily need to see the directory because I'm really familiar with where I need to go and who I need to speak to. We even have information about their advisors and their schedule so that they can actually have a dynamic content entry the minute they walk in the space. So we can kind of move through each piece slowly, but you know, in academics, we have things where we even though the buckets are all there and we have things relating to the registrar or study abroad, the design consistency remains the same. So those icons at the top, we kept them through each page. So if we even page through finances and safety and wellness, yeah, we can keep going. All of these things are a consistent look, a consistent feel. The buttons are all the same shape. We have walk-ins versus links versus icons. So all of that stays together as they move page to page, and everything is really only 1 to 2 clicks away from what they need.
I wanted to talk about 2 of the really unique features of One Pratt that are really related to the nature of your student body, the desire to provide them with access to tools regardless of technology availability at home if they weren't able to come to campus, and essentially to replicate what might have been a lab experience. So is the Launchpad a good place to start with that, Diana and Joe?
Yeah, I think it is. I, I, you're right, Carol. This is one of those pieces of the uh, the accomplishment that we're most proud of. And we're proud of the whole architecture, but the way that One Pratt provides this incredible ecosystem, it's sort of like natural that Launchpad and production were a part of it. So Launchpad, as you have here, is this, that we needed an opportunity where we could make all of our labs virtual. We are running tons of cycle intensive, hardware intensive software, like the Adobe suite, like design software packages like Rhino, video editing software, everything that matches, the way that the students are learning. And so they were all, for the most part, intensive products. So we needed to create something, some way for the students to be able to access all these software packages remotely. But again, we wanted to do something that made sense for Pratt and use design thinking along the way. So what we did with Launchpad is we forced ourselves to say, let's assume that since the students don't have access to our high-end Macs in the labs or the high-end PCs in the labs, what could we do? So the challenge was to allow a student to be able to use a minimum system, a minimally viable system to do their processing. And we kept forcing ourselves into that set of requirements. And what we came up with was the ability through an AWS, set of AWS instances where we have all of our software out there. And Launchpad allows our students to use the smallest capable system. We've tested this and had complete success using it on a Raspberry Pi platform. They could use a 6 or 7 year old laptop, or if they have a spiffy new machine, they could use that. But the thing that it did was, and it goes back to what we were saying before about reacting and responding. We wanted to respond in a way that we took into consideration that this group of students might be a little bit more financially challenged. So I think by applying this type of thinking, we were able to solve some problems along the way and take this into the future. This is something that we would be proud of no matter what came along. It's not just a COVID reaction. So it's something that's going to stay with us for a long time. And then also, as things move back to campus, we're going to be able to have this going forward and take some of the stresses off of the labs and not have it, be that kind of intensive thing where you have to go to the lab to do these things. Production, which you have up here, is another one that we're extremely proud of. We have an incredible set of output centers. We have the largest non-commercial 2D output center in New York City. In addition, we are ramping up 3D output year after year. And we wanted a way for the students to be able to have an environment where they could have a submission tool that would be just the same as them sitting in the lab and have all of the resources to speak to someone, to get consultation on what they were doing, and to go all the way through submitting the tool, knowing what the queues looked like, what their wait time would be, and when they could expect it. And for those students, we have about a third of the students are taking some type of hybrid class right now, and 2/3 are remote. So for the students who are remote, we wanted them to have the same experience, and we're offering them to be able to submit their jobs remotely and then working with our production and mail services at Pratt, be able to ship it out to them and do that fulfillment online. So using the Salesforce architecture and keeping it within the One Pratt experience, we were able to deliver on the promise of having the very same experience.
And this is one feature of this, of One Pratt that I'm quite familiar with, because this was probably technically the most complex of all the pieces that we did, because we needed to maintain the design look and feel without the ability of using standard objects. A lot of this is custom development. We needed additional third-party tools to handle the large file sizes that were coming in that are not typically supported by Salesforce, and then places to deposit that work, both for the student and for the institution as it produced the work. So quite a technical challenge, but certainly one I know that we're proud of our contribution to, and you all should be as well, as I know you are very proud of what this allows you to do as an institution in service to your students' academics. I want to move on to just a brief summary of some of the things that I know, Diana, you have going on as you have considered what you're measuring after post go live and kind of some of the things that are coming along. We'll probably want to give some bullet points on this and certainly be available if people have questions.
Sure. So obviously we have to measure our adoption. We have to know how many people are using it, and we're still working on that. There is we're working on the Salesforce Communities Analytics and seeing what that offers us, as well as reviewing the AWS Analytics for the Launchpad section. So seeing how many faculty versus how many students versus how many staff are actually loading up particular pieces of software. It's actually really incredible, the amount that we see that people are experimenting with software now that they have access to it from wherever they need. We're also looking at production open and closed case rates and case totals to see how many people are submitting, because end all be all, the production underarching, like the architecture, is actually Salesforce cases. We did different record types, and like you said, Carol, it was an interesting interesting experience to have to work on that. But we end all be all, we're using Salesforce cases to pull those production pieces through. Mm-hmm. We are continuing to improve, and we're actually rolling out faculty and staff consoles. We have already done 2 iterations for the students, 1 iteration for the faculty so far, and we're in progress on the staff console, which should be completed before November 1st. Even after November, we are going to continue to enhance the offerings with more interactive components as we learn more about Apex. I know that you guys had handled a lot of the coding for us, because we did have to learn something really quickly to get it off the ground. But as we learn more about Apex and want to get more complicated with what we get or what we present to the student, we're going to continue to iterate off of that and build more into it.
That's great. Mm-hmm. And finally, some lessons learned quickly, and we've talked a lot about the design thinking, deployment strategies in the community's environment, but if you can sum that up in just a few sentences, Diana, in the interest of time, that would be great.
Sure. I think in the past, we try to look at things, or we tended to look at things more from the employee or the administrative point of view. And design thinking allowed us to really think of it from the end user point of view, regardless of what their status was at Pratt, whether they're faculty, student, or staff. We really needed to think about what their experience was before we deliver something. So design thinking really helped us with that. As far as like the deployment strategies, and we were already bringing agile methodologies into our day-to-day. I mean, enterprise used it, but we were trying to push it out divisionally and having people do their day-to-day with Kanbans and daily stand-ups and bringing agile methodologies into what we were doing in the division. Nothing like practice to really give us the experience to learn and really embrace what we've already learned about that. We essentially had to learn a new system, break down walls in the hierarchy, and then realize that we've gone astray with a couple of things that we've already put out there in the past, and then build something new in 45 days. So I think overall it's a super great accomplishment of what we've got. And I think everything we've done to date has really helped us learn a lot more about ourselves and each other as we go along. In terms of the communities environment, I think Communities, the builder, is super easy to use. If you have the data in the right place, you have some really great out-of-the-box functionality. We did have to learn some stuff on the fly, and we're really happy that we had, Ferrilli and Carol and her team helping us out and working with us on the programming pieces that we couldn't quite get to understand yet. And we are still working out some of the intricacies between the records and the licensing and things like that, but all things that with a little bit of a deeper understandings, maybe some creative thinking, and probably even programming assistance, we can kind of get through it. So we're good.
Well, thank you first to Joe and Diana for sharing this phenomenal story. I hope it gets told in many more places as well. It's really a very exciting and accomplishment that you all have led and supported and made available to your students, faculty, and staff. And I know if anybody watching this has questions, we're certainly happy to connect you with our colleagues at Pratt, and we're happy to address any that you might have as well. And with that, I'd be happy to close this presentation. Thank you so much, Joe and Diana.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a pleasure.